The topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
To be alive. I just get started in that groove and it's all over, Red Rover. A bit like some people with their life journeys. You just get it happening and all of a sudden it's all over. You are listening to Rosie Pekar on Until Now on W4CY radio. If you want to join the live chat, and yes, I am live, go across to w4cy.com and click on the right-hand side. I look forward to seeing you all over there and letting me know you're here to join the chat. Today's topic, I promised to do this when I was in Texas recently, and it was lessons learned from the saddle, and they're life lessons for unexpected strategies, unexpected experiences. Good, there are some here. I'm happy to know you're here because I missed out last week. It was Halloween Friday. Yeah, good. Got some here. I was on the plane turning back from the US to Australia, so technically for us, or for myself and my son, Halloween didn't exist because we were on the flight, so we go a day forward. And so hence that show couldn't be broadcast. And the week before, we missed it in Texas because of broadcasting difficulties. The quality we're discovering at the time wasn't as good. But whilst I was in Texas, I had, yes, my son does travel with me. I had the most amazing time, and people ask me what was the best part of the trip, and I have to tell them at all times, the answer is the people, number 2, the people, and number 3, the people. Because what makes any experience fabulous, it's the people with you or the person that you are. That's all you're bringing into it. So, I left in amidst unfortunate circumstances. My girlfriend's father had just passed away, and this is a close girlfriend from childhood. So unfortunately, I couldn't attend the funeral to be there for her because we were flying out of the country. And then another friend of mine, those of you that have been listening for a while know my background has been in law enforcement for an extensive period, and one of my other former brothers in blue passed away. So we weren't able to be there, and another former colleague, his wife also passed away. And it was these experiences that made me think of coupling that with today's show together with what I experienced when I was in Dallas. And you may have heard this poem. It's called The Dash. And I love this poem. And I'm just going to share it here because it sets the tone of what I wish to dedicate this program towards. I read of a man who stood to speak at the funeral of his friend. He referred to the date on a tombstone from the beginning to the end. He noted that first came the date of a birth and spoke of the date with tears. But he said what mattered most of all was the dash between those years. For the dash represents all the time that she spent alive here on earth. And now only those who loved her know what that little dash is worth. For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is how we live and love and how we spend our dash. So think about this long and hard. Are there things you'd like to change? For you never know how much time is left. You could be at dash mid-range. If we could just slow down enough to consider what's true and real and always try to understand the way other people feel and be less quick to anger, show appreciation more, and love the people in our life like we've never loved before. And if we treat each other with respect, more often wear a smile, remembering that this special dash might only last a little while. So when your eulogy is being read with your life's actions to rehash, would you be pleased with the things they say about how you spent your dash? So that dash for me represents what I call a decision. And that was written by, let me find that poem's author. Oh, don't you love it when the computer goes slow for me? You see, this is life's unexpected misadventures. I get the feeling the surname is going to be Ellis, but I will track that back down for you when it's going to play nicely with me. I hope it's not going to do that on all the things. But irrespective, read that dash. You know the way people talk about life at times, and they'll describe life in terms as such as it's been a rough ride, or it's a difficult trot, or the race has already been run. And, you know, this horse analogy has been used a bit. I've just been asked what was the name as well of the poem. The poem was just called The Dash. So I'm quite sure you will find that again on Googling, because my PDF that I had it open from is shut down and is not allowing me to open it now, because I didn't run that from memory. I did read it. And thank you, Linda Ellis, that would be correct, is who the author is of that poem. So that dash, I guess, is what is left as a visible marker, but, you know, we're represented by more than a dash. And that's where I'm saying that dash is our decision. And it's our decision today and every day that we are fortunate and blessed enough to have as an experience on how we choose to spend that dash. Now, I'm a horse in Chinese astrology. And with my recent trip to Texas, I unexpectedly and very generously had the good fortune through friends there to find myself atop a magnificent horse at the Dallas State Fair. Now, being an Aussie in Dallas, when they said, Rose, would you like to come along to the State Fair? And I quickly said yes, because here in Australia, when you mention a fair, it's generally thought of as a small affair. Now, I don't know whether those listening have been to the Dallas State Fair, but it is by no means a small affair. I think it took us 40 minutes in the queue driving up to just get into where we had to turn, but we were treated like royalty. They had a golf cart ready to collect myself and my son, and they took us in, and we got special seats at the Wild West show, because a gentleman who's now become a good friend, Bob Alford, he was the sheriff of Johnson County there, was the head. Yeah, I was there for a meet and greet with some Texas lawmen. And I put lots of photos up on my Facebook profile. So those that haven't worked out how to spell my surname yet, it's Pekar. And the first name is Rosie. So if you Google that, you'll find me. And you're welcome to connect on. But as we got there, Sheriff Alford was ready and waiting for us. He was in between shows, so he took myself and my son out. I got to ride around on the arena, so I posted some pics from there, because I hadn't planned on going on a horse ride in Texas. I mean, a great place to go for a ride, but this was one of life's unexpected adventures. And I love horse riding. You know, I learnt, and when I say learnt, I'm self-taught myself as a child. And I haven't had the opportunity to be on a magnificent beast for a long, long time. So that was an unexpected bonus for me. But while I was there on top of the horse and looking out at the magnificent view from the arena there in the midst of Dallas State Fair in this Wild West show, I pondered the many other unexpected journeys that life's thrown up at me, both in and out of the saddle. And hence, I thought of today's show topic, 7 particular life success strategies for welcoming life's unexpected adventures, because we all have them during that dash in between those years. And I thought I'd share those lessons today. And lesson number 1 is the truth is always in the test. You know, it's only in the saddle that you know what you know. You find out very quickly if you know how to ride it or if you don't know how to ride. You find out very quickly if you've done the strap on the saddle up tight enough or not. You find out very quickly if this horse happens to like you or not. You know, it is experiences. Life is about those experiences. It's not about, the facts that we find out and what we can quote. Henry Ford was involved in a libel suit by the Chicago Tribune, a paper, Tribune you probably call it, and it called him an ignoramus. And Ford said in effect, well, prove it. So they asked him a series of questions, of which Ford had little formal education and therefore couldn't answer. And finally he got really exasperated and he said, I don't know the answer to these questions, but I can find you a man in 5 minutes who does. And the same as Albert Einstein. He taught us a big lesson. He thought it was more important to use your mind to think than to use it as a warehouse for facts. The same as your body. It is there not to store at an instant recollection what facts are. It's to have some fun with it. It's to fill it up with those life experiences. And to know and not to do is to not yet know. So that's what I mean by the truth is in the test. Talk won't cut it. You can talk about writing, your training or lack shows, and it's all in the setup of what you have to work with right at the very beginning. Now, those of you that have listened for a while will probably have worked out by now that I'm using the horse as an analogy because you and that horse have a lot in common. The horse is symbolic of all of life experiences. And it's about how well equipped we are and not so much to do with the horse. So first test is always in the setup, in the foundation, what you've got to work with. What are you ready for? Are you lined up and primed for a great day? Well, for some of you, it will be a great evening, for a really good night's sleep, a really good rest. Excited about what's to come, what's to unfold, what is occurring. This is our juice. This is our energy. This is the currency of that dash that we're doing moment by moment, minute by minute, day by day. So lesson number 1, the truth is always in the test. So if you're getting results in your life you don't like you've been thrown off, you've been bucked off, you haven't worked out how to hold on, it's just information. It's just feedback. It's feedback of that's not the best way to do something. So it's the same with our experiences and living our lives and our reality. We don't stay stuck in situations that didn't work out as we would like them to have planned. There's PTSD is bandied about so much today, and I come from that environment where, I've faced and been around many people who have also faced some really difficult, tough, hard stuff, from deaths to illnesses to, desperate situations. Yet it's the mindset that makes the difference. It's not the reality of what's occurring to them. That mindset is our domain. That's our horse that we're setting up. That's the prime. That's the truth in that test. What have you got that you're taking into every situation that backs you up? What is making sure you've got a really good foundation every single day? The food that you're eating, what you're reading, the things that you're consuming, both through your digestive system, but through your mental, emotional, your physical system. What is it you're taking in every day? I had the good fortune whilst I was there in Dallas to meet, as I said, what was the best part of my trip? It was the people. Coming from that background in law enforcement, we get a bit jaded. We get a bit worn out with life's so-called difficult, tragic, inhumane experiences and can get quite cynical and critical. So that's why I said that dash is a decision, because at every moment I have the opportunity to reorient my true north, to reorient my thoughts, to reorient what is it I'm focusing on and paying attention to, more wanted or more unwanted. So the fun stuff is what gets my attention these days. But in meeting with those people in law enforcement, because I got to meet, the sheriff of Tarrant County, Sheriff Bill Wayborn, who is an exceptional gentleman, Sheriff Bob Alford from Johnson County, again, exceptional individual, Rick Van Houten from the Police Association, exceptional, amazing individuals, Kurt Brannan and Richard Morris, both have given exemplary, lengthy service within the Dallas Police Department. And, there's others I'm probably forgetting to mention, and forgive me that I have, but I just want to say that everywhere I went, I saw their standard that they set for living, which wasn't just for themselves, which was a really high benchmark of respect, of value, appreciation, and gratitude. It was also for everyone they encountered. And I'm going to tell you a true story, and Richard, forgive me that I share this. We were out for breakfast with my son and I, and Richard, who's from the police department, and he'd seen another gentleman who had a war veteran's cap. So not only has he picked up our tab to say thank you for being guests visiting in our country, we'd like to shout you, and shout you means, buy your breakfast, but he's gone to pick up our check at the same time he's picked up this veteran's check. And he's simply said to the veteran, I'd like to thank you for your service, and picked it up. And this was his way of showing appreciation. Now, as we've walked out the breakfast place, this gentleman has followed after us, and he's followed after us with tears in his eyes. And he stopped my friend and he said to him, "You'll have no idea." He said, "I'm here today because it's my father's funeral. He died yesterday, and I'd always go for breakfast with my father, and he picked up the check." And he said, "So you coming along, sir, and picking up my check today lets me know he's still picking up my check for me." So this man, and a grown man, was in tears, and it's beautiful and symbolic, because here he was, wrapping his arms around a man he'd only met mere moments before in a heart-to-heart embrace, two people that were total strangers mere minutes ago, brought together by the decision of one act of how that man chose to live his dash. Wonderful opportunity. And it was an opportunity that wasn't missed. So life can always be unexpected. It can have wonderful and amazing surprises at all times. So with our horse analogy, lesson number 2 is, if we're going to go ride a horse and learn lessons from the saddle, you have to get on the horse. And exactly as one listener has commented, you can make a big difference in people's lives with the smallest things. Well, I'm here to tell you, people, it's the smallest things that matter the most. It's those kind, many unremembered acts of kindness that add up and amass to a life well worth having lived. It's not the big one-offs. People think, it's the special accolades, it's the special rewards, the recognition. No, it's not. It's in those many little moments. And that's just one that I saw. I saw many of them, simple gestures, the sheriff stopping, taking the time as they walked past, other, I guess we would term subordinates, those not as high ranking, that some may perceive erroneously as not being as important, which that would be an erroneous assumption, incorrect assumption. The sheriff didn't rush. He took time with every individual to shake their hand, to thank them for the job they were doing, to acknowledge, and was equally aware that the whole structure is only as good as each and every one of its parts that make up the whole structure. That's what makes community, is our connection. It's our communication. It's the people. So as we take that time, and especially when we get confronted in the media with terrible and atrocious things happening, and we start to do that rhetoric of how bad things are, how rough things is, how unfair things is, and want to run in that range, it doesn't make any of us feel good. It doesn't make us feel empowered, because we can't go out there and paint the whole world rosy in one instant, as much as I'd love to. And that becomes wearying when we try to do that. That's not our task. Our task is ourselves alone, with how we choose to live that dash, how we choose to run our race, how we choose to, set our pace, This is ourselves getting on our own horse. So talking about riding and riding are two different things. And Stephen Covey, the master himself, author of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, said the map is not the territory. And he's 100% on the money there, because talking about being on that horse and being on the horse, they are two unrelated experiences. So the experience itself is what gives us our understanding and our awareness, not the words about the experience. It's the doing, it's the action. That's what's real. That's the reality. And it's your reality reveals what you've done, what you know, and what you do. And that's your results. That's the ride of your life. And the ride of your life is occurring non-stop. It's ongoing. You don't get off that ride. The only time you get off that ride is more or less at times we might fall off, be thrown off. And even then, it's our opportunity to reassess that something may not really be working so well for us. So if our results are revealing to us that what we've done and what we know and what we do isn't really working for us, that's really good, because it gives us the opportunity to make a choice. Remember, I said that dash is a decision. The choice is now, okay, I desire, more opportunities to feel harmony instead of stress. I desire more opportunities to be aware instead of anxious. I desire more opportunities to experience love instead of hate, to feel success instead of failure, to feel happy instead of unhappy, to feel abundant and appreciative rather than poor and in poverty, to feel courage and strength as opposed to fear, to be clear instead of confused, to be strong instead of weak, and to feel at peace instead of at war. Now, these are all decisions, and they're small decisions made moment by moment, day by day. This is our dash. So we understand that the truth is in the test, our setup of ourselves, that we have to actually get on the horse. So it's not about someone else riding that horse or what someone else does, or because they can ride like an absolute star. I watched Sheriff Alford in the Wild West show as he raced around, and then we watched another young child who was a couple of years older than my son, and he was doing tricks on the horse, and he'd only been doing it a couple of weeks, as he's balancing upside down, holding one hand onto the pummel of the Western saddle and one hand down around the front of the horse while his legs are up straight in the air where anyone else's head and shoulders and body would be. So he's literally riding it upside down, just holding on with one hand. He learnt this in a few weeks. Mind you, he has been riding since he was the age of 2. And it was my son's first time on a horse that he just walked around. And I said, you can't compare your ride or your race to someone else's son. And that's a message for all of us as human beings. We've got to stop comparing ourselves to where someone else is at, what someone else's reality is. That's not ours. Our only relevance is what's occurring and happening in our lives. So you have to get on the horse. Once you're on the horse, lesson number 3, start slow. After you start slow, giddy up, go, go, go. You feel your way. It's the same with any experience. Feel your way, feel your setup. Like if I'm talking horse talk, this is where you get to readjust, your stirrups or your saddle. If it's too loose, you check your equipment. You feel what it's like to actually be on. Are you in charge? Are you in sync? Are you in flow? Because on a horse, you certainly will know. And, horses now are used in therapy for humans. They've been doing this for thousands of years, but they've cottoned on to make this a business, and a big business recently, to assist people not only with physical challenges such as cerebral palsy, but also with psychological challenges. And, people, when you're around a horse, they often say to you, just relax, because the horse knows if you're afraid. This might be one of the first things you hear when you encounter something that's over 1 ton that's about to approach you and knows all your secrets and will magically react to what they sense about you. So the horse's capabilities to sense your true feelings has nothing to do with magic, but with over 50 million years of successfully surviving as prey animals. So horses rely on reading body language to sense safety or danger, and can even read your heart rate from over 10 meters away. So their survival depends on their innate, highly evolved instincts. So the horses can read our true feelings and intentions, and they reflect back the behavior they see. So if you're fearful and agitated, the horse picks up that fear and agitation and can mimic it the same way. Obviously, if it's a fairly aged, docile and calm horse, which is the ones that they generally utilize around people in order to encourage that response within human beings, it's a different reality. But I got to tell you, I learnt horse riding on the wrong, I'm going to say wrong type of horses, but those that have been listening know I don't believe in wrong. I just believe in not getting the result I wanted. But I learnt by jumping on former racehorses that have been put out to pasture. Now, racehorses have been trained a particular way that once you give them a little bit of nudge, they're not generally going to do a nice, gentle, slow gait. They're sort of going to go for a race straight out the gate. And I learned this in a very difficult fashion at a very young age. And I would have been lucky to be 5 stone wringing wet, which is probably about 60 pounds or so at the time. And I remember going racing. Well, I didn't plan to be racing, but I went horse riding with a girlfriend of mine who was much more aware about horse friends and how to be around them. And mine was just jump on the thing and let's go. I'd watched too many Cisco and Pancho shows in the day. And her mother made me wear a helmet, and my head has always been tiny. Even in the police force, they couldn't find a hat that fit me correctly. So they put this helmet on my head that as soon as we actually started riding, it fell down over my eyes. So I literally could only see the ground that I was moving over the top of. I couldn't see anything in front of me. And in hindsight, that's probably a good thing, because when I kicked the horse to go, following after my girlfriend, this horse went like the wind. It raced out of the blocks. Our Melbourne Cup Day had the horses that run that race had nothing on this horse, because it was just flooring it. It knew, one speed, and that was absolutely flat out. And all I could see was the ground just tearing away. And I'm going to exaggerate and say 100 miles an hour, but I don't know what this horse speed reached. But all I know was the ground was flying past me, and I could not see a thing. I couldn't see what I was heading towards, which is, as I said, in hindsight, a good thing. And I did see at one point as we're tearing along that my girlfriend that I was riding with is now on the ground, being dragged alongside her horse, only momentarily, thank goodness. So I thought, well, that's no good, because I'm relying on her horse to stop to make my horse stop. And her horse now really was racing now that it had lost its rider. So my horse was following after it and racing along as fast as it possibly could. And luckily I was on a horse that had a Western saddle, and it having a Western saddle meant that it came to a sudden stop. My hand was holding on for dear life onto the horn on that Western saddle, and my legs were just gripping on for dear life, because I had no idea what was going to happen. And this horse has stopped instantly, dead stop. And I thought, oh, thank goodness. I was nearly flung over its neck, but for the saving grace of that horn that I was able to so dearly hold on to. And as I've sat myself back in the saddle and I've lifted up my helmet so I could actually see what was around me, I saw that the horse had stopped right at the edge of a precipice, right at the edge of a cliff. So the horse was smart. It wasn't planning on going over that cliff. And it wasn't too concerned about its rider. If I didn't know to hang on for dear life, I wouldn't have had that dear life. So fortunately for me, I was all right. My girlfriend was a little bit, sorrier and worse for wear from that fall from the horse, but she recovered well enough. And, that's where I learnt, if you don't start slow, you better be prepared for all other eventualities, because it can happen in an instant. And many of these life's experiences that change our lives irrevocably, for the worse or for the better, can happen in an instant. So I prefer to feel my way. I start slow, and as I build my confidence, then I go, go, go. Because if you're a little bit off, by the time that you're going at a faster speed and a higher speed, it hurts like hell when you come off. It's uncomfortable, it's hard, it's awkward, and ultimately it can be life endangering. So any new practice that we're learning, take your time. There's no rush. It needn't be a race. And if you're on something that only knows how to race, then your skill set better improve to adjust accordingly. So my strategy number 4, obviously, was get back on. You've got to get back on the horse. I had horses that have bucked and bolted and have bitten, because all the horses I was around were generally animals that were destined for what we call the glue factory. They had passed their expiry date of being useful to their so-called previous owners that had made money off them. So now they were put up to pasture. So these animals, I never knew their personalities or characters. And yes, I agree, as one has questioned, so many are so scared to get back on the horse. Again, and many are so scared I'm using the horse analogy, but what I'm talking about is life. Many are scared to confront the experiences that have introduced fear in your life. But when you don't face fear, it becomes even greater. Be that a fear of talking to a stranger, like my friend Richard did. He would have missed out on that wonderful opportunity of that moment of connection and pure love if he'd been afraid of approaching a stranger. There are many examples in life that we all, can lack confidence in different areas, or we've been so afraid because of something negative or terrible or difficult that's occurred in the past. It's remembering that dash is a decision. Is what's occurred in the past going to reoccur in the present? Is it part of my future? And it's only if my part of my future in a negative way if I construct it that way. It's challenging for some people to understand that they are the writer, that they are the director. They are actually the master of their realities, of these difficulties that have occurred within our life. So, if we're approaching situations that we know, like if I'm approaching a horse that is wild and bucking, I've got a good indicator of what my experience is going to be going near that horse. I'd probably pick a better horse. So that goes back to that start slow. Pick the horse that is calmer, that is quieter. I was amazed in Dallas because my son was being introduced to many of these horses, and I would tell him, put your hand out, let them sniff you, let them smell you. You don't need to rush straight through to them. And I said, once they smell you, they get an idea of you, then just give them a nice little scratch. And these horses were nibbling and nibbling all over my son's face, and as well as myself. And I looked at the owners and I said, are they going to bite? And they said, no, they've never bitten in their life, Rose. And they looked at me like, what a surprising question. And I thought, maybe that's just the Australian horses and maybe it's representative of the Australian horses of the people that had them before I came across them, because many of these horses, I've not been bitten by one, fortunately, but I certainly know many of my friends that have been, and I've had a few attempt to have a quick go along the way. So it's identifying what we've got to work with. You've got to get back on. Whatever you enjoy, always after any fall in life, rebuild your confidence. Do it naturally. Being thrilled should overtake being nervous. Anxiety and stress can be used as fuel to monitor, to mediate, and eventually to master as useful aids to empower you on purpose, to be able to make something that was once scary fun. I love a wild ride. For me, it is exhilarating. It is thrilling. I've had lots of wild escapades through my life, but all your senses are activated, and they're activated. There's that old saying, you never feel more alive than when you're right on the edge. And, I find that quite true because you are so stimulated. So as one listener asks, how do we find our purpose? Well, again, this is an individual process. And I would say to you, you find it by what thrills and fulfills you, what excites and delights you. What do you, one of my friends commented when they saw the picture that I posted of me on the horse, and they said, "Oh, Rosie, that smile on your face." And it was, yes. Now, again, it was reminding me, as I mentioned earlier, I haven't been on a horse for a long, long time. Our purpose needn't be the things that we think someone else goes, "Well done, Rose, that's great that you've done that." Our purpose is those things that fill us up, that, put mileage in that dash, and that mileage is smileage. It's what gets that smile. That's the mile that matters. That's the most important. You're going, "Yes, Rosie, here she is with her analogies all over again." But see, I say these silly things because they stick. And when they stick, I become like a burr in the brain. And, people say, "Oh, Rosie, I couldn't get you out of my head." And I say, "Well, aren't you lucky you get to turn me off?" I don't. I have me 24/7. So finding our purpose, there isn't a one size fits all, which I'm getting to as one of our lessons. So I'll get to that one. We're jumping the gun, as we say, but I will answer that question. Lesson number 5 is look after your horse, your gear, look after those experiences, recognize, respect, and repair. It reflects your relationship to everything around you. These experiences show you. They don't show you the experience. They show how well equipped you are of any unexpected adventure that shows up in your arena. If you've got a horse that's tired, go easy. You've got one that's energetic, use that energy. You've got one that's ill, let it rest and recover. If it's frisky or cantankerous, take control. You're the master. You direct. If it wants to, I had one horse I rode that, it was determined to rub me off in every tree it come across at very fast pace. The only way you do that is, grab those reins and spin it in circles. And the only reason you keep it in circles is to let it know it's not going anywhere unless you decide it's going somewhere. So it's the same with some life experiences. My young son, he went to visit a friend, and the friend was a little bit rude when he visited. And my son, told me this experience when he returned. And I said to my son, "Well, why did you stay?" And he said, "Oh, because of a video game he was hoping to eventually play with this child, which he never did get to do." And I said, "Well, do you realize that you're teaching this person how to behave towards you? Because every time we accept less than the best in anything, any individual, any relationship, any of the experiences, we are saying that's okay." And I reminded my son, I overheard a year fiver, which is what we call, a preppy here in school. And this little preppy, she's 5 years of age, was riding her bicycle, and she rode it past me. And as she rode past me, there was a young girl walking, running, trying to keep up with her. And the little girl on the bicycle said, I heard her answer, "Sure, you can be my friend, but try to be nice, okay?" I thought that 5-year-old had the answer. That's how we train people how to treat us. We tell them, we show them by our own example. When they don't follow our example of our courtesy and our respect and our value and our kindness and our generosity and our open-heartedness and our open-mindedness, we don't continue that association. It's sort of like, when a child is throwing a tantrum, that is not the time you give the child the attention, because you are training that child. That behavior gets results. I've got them paying attention. That's the time we give no attention. That's the time we ignore. We pay attention to what's wanted. The moment their behavior changes to what's wanted, That's the moment that we give positive reinforcement. That's the moment we remind and say, oh, I love it that you picked that stuff up and you put it back where it belonged. Thank you. You've helped me so tremendously. I love it. You know, I had to get used to in Dallas there, because I'm a very independent woman and I'm really fast, as most of you already know, trying to keep up with listening to me. You know, I was already at the door and opening it. And the cowboys were saying, ma'am, will you give us a chance to open your door? They wanted to be generous and kind and gentlemanly, and I was taking that away from them. This was behavior they were used to. And I said, you know, the scary bit is I'm going to get used to this, and I'll come back to Australia and I'm going to be standing outside a car door for about 10 minutes before an Aussie bloke cottons on. He's meant to open the door for me. So we train the people how to treat us. And that was as I said earlier, you know, what I love most about Dallas was the people, because I love the community. I love the connection. I love the appreciation. I love the positive endorsements. I saw several couples that are, you know, enjoying very long-term relationships, and each one of them spoke so gloriously about the other when the other wasn't present. And I love hearing that. There was no degrading. There was no putting down. There was no talking down. You know, that's how we train people how to treat us. We set the example by how we are. You know, that's how we look after those things around us. We choose those actions and we set the standard and the example. And if it's less than the best, we remove ourselves from it. Put your attention onto what does feel good. You know, people only continue that behavior if we allow it. And that word allowing is a really important word to have picked up on there. And some people will think, but Rosie, you know, I don't allow it. I say how I don't like this. Well, being critical of something is completely different. Being critical of a situation and complaining is paying attention to unwanted. Allowing means choosing that decision of that dash, choosing the action, which means if I want someone bringing me roses, for example, I would talk about how I love the roses. I love the smell of the roses. I would be stopping and smelling every roses. You know, I'd be showing pictures of roses. They would be stuck up all around the individual. And at some point when I eventually got a rose or any type of flower, oh, my appreciation, it would never end. There would be no mistaking to that individual that roses was what I was after. So never miss an opportunity to show your appreciation and thankfulness, no matter how small, for what is wanted, because that is the seed that you are watering. That is the action and intention that you are planting and watering every day with your thoughts and attention. So continuing on to my life lesson number 6 of lessons learned in the saddle. And if you've just turned in, you're listening to Rosie Pekar on Until Now on W4CY. You can go across to w4cy.com and click on the right-hand side and join the live chat and ask your questions at any time. I'll eventually get to them and answer. So lesson number 6. One size is not expected to fit all. This is the, you know, picking our purpose. How do we find our purpose? So, you know, that one size doesn't fit all of us for the saddle, the setup, the gear. You know, so why in life do we seek approval for only one right way or answer to do anything, or the right way to tackle any experience? No two rides the same. No two people are the same. No two fingerprints. No two experiences, despite there may be overlapping similarities. So allow yourself to be different. Make it okay to not be the same. It's a skill to disagree without conflict. I recently posted in respect of the unfortunate tragedy that occurred there within Texas, and some people quickly jumped on to make it a debate about pro or against, you know, gun reform. And, you know, I made a specific comment to say, you know, this wasn't the forum I was seeking. I was seeking only to share my prayers with those going through a difficult time. And I said it's a skill to be able to disagree intelligently with the ability to keep everyone united and active in a discussion that we disagree upon. There is nothing wrong with disagreeing, but there is everything wrong with attacking a person, belittling a person, or deriding a person because we disagree. That's simply bullying. So develop that art of being able to disagree, to be able to stand in your space and your truth of, what thrills and fills you up, to me might be my idea of a nightmare. You don't need my approval or anyone else's approval for what fulfills and thrills you. So remove the but. That's the bloody useless thought. Remember, every time I say I could do that but, what follows is a bloody useless thought. So remove that but. And the bigger the but's been, the better your life will be once it's removed, because you've created a vacuum, a vast space that nature now loves to fill. And since you're now only paying attention to wanted in your experiences, in your reality, that's what it's going to be filling up with, because that's what you're allowing in now. So lesson number 6 keeps our attention, that one size is not expected to fit all, keeps our attention on the fact of what's important to us, the ease, the harmony, the stimulation, the creation, and that's when we agree to disagree. So lesson number 7 in the lessons I've learnt on the back of a horse is don't antagonize your ride. Keep your feelings to yourself if they're not feel-good feelings. So when faced with the choice of being angry or happy, choose happy. When faced with the choice of being mad or glad, be glad. When faced with the choice of being afraid or brave, I know which one I pick. Life's adventures aren't always known. However, our companions on the way, they can shine and light our way, or they can spoil the day. Your companions on any ride are your choice. You pick your horse, you feed it, you back it, and at the end of the day, you're the one who rides it. And whether it's a rough ride, whether it's an exhilarating ride, a terrific ride, an unbridled, never before experienced ride, that's going to be entirely a matter up to yourself. So just to recap our lessons very quickly. Lesson number 1, the truth is in the test. Lesson number 2, you have to get on the horse. Lesson number 3, start slow before you go. Lesson number 4, always just get back on after a fall. Lesson number 5, look after your horse, which is your gear, what you've got to work with. Lesson number 6, one size is not expected to fit all. Don't try and make one size fit all. Lesson number 7, don't antagonize your ride. These are your opportunities that you have within life to change your experiences. Now, if you're looking for more motivation and inspiration, you can go across to www.kickbutt with 1 T. If you spell it with 2 T's, you're going somewhere else, .com.au. And I always love to hear your appreciation. It's what thrills and fills, my day here in Australia. There's lots that I selectively choose, but I appreciate your time that you choose to share it with me. So much love to all of you, and I look forward to talking with you all next week, same time. You've been listening to Rosie Pekar on Until Now.